Vikings postgame coverage continues now with Vikings Overtime on FM 100.3 KFAN and the Fan Radio Network. Vikings Overtime is presented by Xfinity, Profile by Sanford, TimberTech, Carboni's Pizzeria, the Hair Restoration Institute, and by Honda. Now with more postgame coverage of today's Vikings game, here's the fans, Eric Nordquist, AJ Mansour, and Paul Lambert.
What's happening, sports fans? Your Minnesota Vikings have won 2 straight. They win 34-31 over the Packers. The Packers fall to 8-3, and what a game it was. Rodgers threw 4 touchdowns. Cousins threw 3. Justin Jefferson had 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. AJ and Nordo, what a game we saw. All 3 of us were here. You guys are now back at the studio, but, man, what a fun football game that was.
It's fun because it ended the way it was. I mean, there was a moment where it felt like it wasn't going to be so fun, given the way that the season has gone, given the way that this team performs. But you're right. It was an entertaining game. Like Nordo has been preaching to you and I, Paul, all season long. We're now playing meaningful football deep into the season, and it's going to be fun, Eric.
Absolutely. I know you guys wanted the losing to just commence like 2 months ago.
At one point, they looked like they were going to finish with 5 wins.
I know.
Yeah, nobody saw this coming.
No one saw this coming, and we weren't the only ones.
You guys were rooting for Book of Revelations, weeping and gnashing of teeth, and beasts, and all of these things like a month into the season. So, no, it's cool to get back. It
might have been a little premature.
I hope for wins if they lose week 1. Let's be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, they get their head above water now. I mean, just the idea of the battle, the exhausting battle that we've watched through 10 weeks of the season with this team finally getting back to 5-5. 9 of these games are 1 possession games. Saucy, you and I was there spotting. You were standing just up above me there in the radio booth, and as soon as the Vikings made it 31-24, I just looked back at you, and we almost had the exact same thought. We're like, this is probably going to overtime.
Yeah.
And 1 play.
Right.
And Marcus Valdes-Scantling goes 75.
Yeah. It was one of those games, too, when you watch it, it had everything we needed. We got up, of course. I mean, the stat is I think they've led almost every game by at least 7 points. It's the 8th game of the season that has come down to, like, the final possession for this team. It's just everything. And then they score. They throw the touchdown to JJ, which was a great play. They go for the dagger, which everyone has waited for. They didn't just sit on the ball and then kick the field goal. They did everything we wanted to do. They went for it on 4th downs. They went for 2, even though they had to go up by 7. But it was everything that we've basically all been yelling at the radio and the TV, and the fans have been yelling here at US Bank Stadium for months now, is attack. And they kept attacking even when, as you just said, Nordo, that 75-yard touchdown from Rodgers to Scantling is just a counterpunch by Rodgers, and they got back up off the mat, walked themselves down the field, set themselves up for the Greg Joseph field goal, and they won the game. It's fun now. And AJ, you nailed it. They are playing meaningful football in November, and after 2 straight losses to start the season, I thought they'd maybe be 3-7 at this point.
The thing that you're talking about with the aggressiveness, looking back at the game, obviously we come out the victory. I'm kind of disappointed that KJ didn't come up with that catch just before half. There were no kneel downs. There was no mailing it in. Hey, we have the lead. They've given up 59 points in the final 2 minutes of the first half.
That's
now,
hideous.
By the way, that's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
That's 3.5% of total game time. That's more than a quarter of the points they've allowed all season.
Right.
Within that 2 minute time frame. But if that catch to KJ Osborne is good
point.
They're moving and trying to kick. The aggressive way, and that goes back to last week if you think about it, and the way that they had to battle to keep pace and kind of move away slowly but surely from the Chargers. If this is going to be the ongoing theme where this offense at least was able to fend off and keep up with Aaron Rodgers. I think he threw a touchdown in every possession they had in the second half today.
I think you are correct.
I mean, to be able to keep the pace the way that they did, and you knew the Packers were going to come charging, and to do what they did and continue to stay as aggressive, that's a huge plus. And I know it's weird to say this because there have been a lot of hashtags out there, I have to give props to some of the things that Clint Kubiak helped orchestrate for Kirk Cousins in this offense today.
Well,
all of that said, sorry, real quick, it almost bit us in the butt at the end of the game there. When you're still getting aggressive, you're throwing the ball down the field. We want them to throw it to Justin Jefferson. We want them to stretch the field. But when you're up by 7, it was a tie game at that point.
That was almost
a tie game at that point. It was picked off until he hit the ground, and then the challenge reversed that call. That was almost a dangerous situation there, which wasn't fully necessary, but I like the aggression, but I don't force it into a double team. I mean, there's a lot of ifs and everything in there as well. But it was a game also, guys, where we haven't even talked about this yet, where everything seemed to come up the purple. Yeah. There were challenges, there were misplays, there were flags on the Packers, which PA said about 10 times, one of the lowest penalized teams in the league, continued to get hit and hit and hit. The muffed punt that bumps right back up into Westbrook's arms. Everything came up Minnesota today, including, obviously, the final score, Paul.
Yeah, and how about the other play, too, with Thielen, where the cornerback for the Packers jumped the route, thought he had it, and then Adam Thielen just catches it, and then runs and gets the first down and gets big yardage. And then the run that they had with Dalvin, I think Dalvin said in his the post game, or maybe even said it with Lieber, he could have scored.
He went down, yeah,
but
absolutely.
He went down, yes, and he knew that you just can't give the ball back to Rodgers, and I thought it was played perfectly.
Yeah, and I'm not offended by, and I'm okay with things. Just you mentioned kind of the luck side of it, right? Like the day that Darnell Savage had.
Yeah.
Justin Jefferson runs the wrong route, and Kirk throws it right to Savage.
Oh, yeah, I forgot.
But there's
about
the roughing the passer.
Yeah, which was blatant roughing the passer.
Savage almost has another interception. Thielen has to play defensive back on that play to knock it out of Savage's hands. And then the one where he was just, he fell straight on it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was all three him.
I didn't either, AJ.
No,
I didn't notice that either.
That's the day that Savage had.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So once in a while, there are certainly some things that go in your favor. The penalties were mind-blowing today because that is the fact. I mean, whether we love it or hate it, and all jokes aside, they are as disciplined a team year to year typically as anybody in the NFL. And for their 8 penalties today, a lot of them were drive killers and extending drives for the Vikings and getting into the end zone. And the Vikings, as disciplined as they've been basically all season, only 3 penalties for the purple today. So, things did go the Vikings' way, but the key to all of it, the way I look at it, is they took advantage of it. Moments like that knuckleball throw that Kirk had to Thielen, you were talking about, Saucy. Roswell Douglas thinks it's back shoulder.
Yep.
It's front shoulder. And you could tell it almost surprised Thielen as Douglas comes across his face and suddenly the ball's there and he's good for like 25 yards or so. I loved the game flow, the aggression, keeping pace, taking all the punches that Rodgers came with in the second half, and the field goal. I love them actually, just like against the Chargers, not giving the Chargers an opportunity to come down the field and tie it up. You did whatever you could do to run out the clock with the ball in your hands, and we did that today. And on the foot of Greg Joseph, we're 5-5. It's sweet.
But you can't blame Vikings fans for getting nervous about that decision, though.
No, all of us in the booth got nervous. Everybody, we all thought, "Oh, here comes the interception's going to happen," and right after that touchdown. But I mean, we watched the Packers, before they threw the 75-yard touchdown. I think PA mentioned it on the broadcast, and I think Pete or Abbott confirmed it. I don't think the Packers had a third down when they marched down the field the one time in the fourth quarter. I mean, those Packers found something, but as I've said from the beginning here, I love the way the Vikings reacted. They took multiple counter punches from one of the best quarterbacks to ever play football on a team that was banged up from the Packers standpoint, a Vikings team that has had its ups and downs all year with COVID and injuries, and they're missing their best offensive lineman, and they won the game 34-31. I thought it was sweet.
We were talking about Darnell Savage and Vikings overtime, plenty of time to go. I'm sure this will come up here. How about the day Xavier Woods had?
Oh, man.
I mean, he has
John Creasel would have been better out there.
He's had a nice season overall for the Vikings. Not necessarily explosive and splashy plays, but in terms of what we needed to accomplish in terms of replacing Anthony Harris, I think he's been pretty good for the most part this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was involved potentially on every big play that the Packers had offensively.
Right.
The Valdez-Scantling touchdown, you see number 23 chasing him.
I was going to say, you got to see his number a lot because there was a lot of chasing.
Yeah, I knew he was lost on one of the Devontae Adams touchdowns. There was a moment where he had the ability to square up Equinemius St. Brown on some end-around rushing play behind the line of scrimmage. Whiffs like a breeze through the beauty of U.S. Bank Stadium. Sets up a better first and goal, and they end up scoring on that drive. I think every single time the Packers made hay offensively, Xavier Woods was somewhere either in the wrong spot, missing a tackle. I'm glad we got out with a win. It always feels better to get ripped on tape when you're victorious. Holy cats!
Yeah, it was rough, and Rodgers does that, right? He'll find a situation and pick on it. It's tough for us to say, again, whether or not other people had responsibilities on those plays. Someone was supposed to be there and help. But when it happens as often as it did today, over and over and over, there's one common denominator there, and it was number 23.
Yeah, it was. But you're right. And a lot of it's Rodgers. And right out of the gates, I think, because of the type of season we've had and just our general disposition as Vikings fans, that first play of the game, that wasn't Xavier Woods. I think that was Kendricks.
Yeah. Lieber said it on the broadcast that Kendricks made a mistake.
Yeah, very first play of the game was the 37-39. Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. That immediately, what does that do? It's not like, oh, damn, they got us. All right, let's get the defense. We're thinking, here we go.
Yeah, here we go. He's going to have a 500-yard day.
Okay, this is awesome. 41 donut reincarnate happening on a Sunday when we have a chance to go 5-5. That is the fatalist part of it. And it's just as good as Rodgers is, bad toe, wasn't as mobile. He made things interesting at times back there in the pocket today. Not able to run as perfectly or as smartly as he usually could. He made it interesting back there, but he always finds a way. I mean, just the frustration that we have from his greatness. And today was another one of those. He was nearly perfect in the second half.
Yeah.
7-play, 75-yard drive. We were feeling good going up 23-10, and he just mashes on us. 5-minute drive, scores. We end up punting. Still can't believe, we can get into that third down toss to C.J. Ham in the first half another time. But then he goes we punt after it makes it 23-17. 12 plays, 94 yards, a soul-crushing drive. And they're able to take the lead there. But again, we just marched our way down a 5.5-minute drive in the fourth quarter to retake the lead. I mean, that is, again, Kubiak is much maligned, and they're probably 85% of it is justified. But what he did on that drive to take the 31-24 lead, some of the off-balance play calling, you could tell that Green Bay, when you were trying to do a bit of tempo, you weren't subbing, so they had to keep the same guys on the field. Like, Kubiak deserves some credit for a couple of drives in this game that, frankly, were masterpieces and go into part of that win today.
Well, and the other thing that I thought was wonderful from Kubiak's standpoint is towards the end of the game, other than the bad throw that was almost picked off and would have given them great field position, was he used JJ towards the end of the game as a complete decoy. I mean, when they ran that little, whatever, I think Pete called it like a Kansas City route behind Cook, and then all of a sudden they throw to Thielen on like a wide receiver screen. It was stuff like that where they found an absolute stud in Justin Jefferson, and they used it against the Packers' aggressiveness. And I thought the offensive line, for the most part, played well. I mean, I think Mason Cole wasn't very good, and that's something else we can talk about. I thought that there's something up with that. Yeah, but the first quarter he was horrible.
Right, there was one play where
Kenny Clark
drove him straight back into the quarterback.
Yeah.
There were still some weird situations, right? But when you talk about Justin Jefferson, they're setting the table to have him be an X factor in every single game. When you line him up out of the backfield, and he runs, Ben Lieber called it an F-angle route.
Yeah,
it was like a Dalvin Cook where you go out and to the right and then back across the middle for that touchdown. Is Jefferson's second
City
touchdown?
Would run.
Right. You're setting the table to make him a focal point on every single play. And when you have to focus on one player, you open the opportunity for other players to do things that or get one-on-one matchups that maybe they normally wouldn't. That's where you see that Thielen and Jefferson thing come together. Now you got them in the backfield, and you have different eyes back there. You're opening up, and if they continue to progress, that's the key there. Kubiak had a good game. He got creative, continued to progress. Don't rest on your laurels. Don't fall back into that conservative play next week. You've got a tough game against the 49ers, a team who you're technically tied with right now. I think somehow they have a weird tiebreaker over the 49ers when it comes to the playoff spots. We can talk about that later, but it's going to matter later on in the season. The outcome of this upcoming game, whether it's ranking in the playoffs or the final spot in the playoffs, it's the 49ers and the Vikings are going to be in that conversation.
Yeah, let's break. We'll come back. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of positive things, but there's also some things that I'd like to get your guys' opinions on. The Vikings win 34-31. They improved to 5-5. The Packers fall to 8-3. Your Minnesota Vikings take on the 49ers, as AJ just said, next week at 3:25. We'll get to all that on Vikings Overtime right here on the...
A 29-yard field goal to win the game against the 8-2 Packers right hash. Joseph. Snap. Spot. Joseph! Yes, he did! He walked off on the Green Bay Packers, who have lost their first division road game in 3 years. The final score, Minnesota 34, Green Bay 31. This is Minnesota Vikings football.
Welcome back. The Minnesota Vikings, as PA just said, won 34-31 over the Pack. That stat, you guys, AJ and Nordo, what an incredible stat that their first loss of a division game. Wow, that I knew the Packers were good, but that's an incredible stat.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind how.
The Lions. You
get the Lions, you get to play the Bears, and the Vikings stunk last year.
Yeah, that's a good point. But still, 3 years, did he say? That's incredible. Yeah. So, here we are. Let's talk about it. Let's just talk about it. Garrett Bradbury missed games, obviously, because of COVID. And then he comes back, and we heard right away that he was starting at practice this week. And then, I don't know, an hour before the game, we get the text or tweet that he's out and Mason Cole is in. Nordo, AJ, your thoughts on that?
So fill me in on the specifics. I know obviously he didn't play, but was he available or inactive?
He was available.
He was available,
so
yeah.
He got benched.
He was on the field today in pads, wearing a baseball cap, helmet in his hand.
He got benched.
Yeah. Well,
interesting.
I mean, it's possible. I mean, they could frame it up where he just needed to get his legs back under him.
Right.
Missed 2 games.
Sure.
Yeah, COVID, maybe trying to get over the fatigue, trying to bounce back, all of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, in the 2 games that we had seen prior to this, I thought Mason Cole overall looked the part and just looked a bit stronger.
Right.
From a pass protection standpoint than what we've seen from Garrett. It's frustrating. I mean, when we drafted Garrett Bradbury, we drafted what I thought was supposed to be the toughest, meanest guy in that draft at the offensive line position. And so the concept of really just seeing him having to work to build size, to build strength, and constantly dealing with guys that are Kenny Clark's size every week and losing a lot of those battles, it's frustrating to watch. I think Mason Cole played today. That would be my grade because he got his butt kicked for about the first half of the game by Kenny Clark.
Kenny Clark's an all-pro.
Absolutely. He can make anybody in the league look stupid at times. There's no doubt about it. But Mason Cole was losing just about every single matchup early on and for the first part of this game. And, you were seeing it with a couple of negative run plays and just a lack of explosion in the run game early on. And then as things wore down, Mason Cole started looking stronger, started pushing things forward, and Dalvin started the 2 and 3 yard runs earlier in the game were now 6, 7, and 8, and we just kind of trucked things forward at that point. So, but Cole was fine, and I guess at this point, I think it's very unfair to just base on 2-3 game stretch for Mason Cole to say that he's absolutely better than Garrett Bradbury overall. But he has, it looks like, for the most part, played better than Garrett Bradbury during those 3 games.
Yeah, and the offense as a whole has looked better. There's been, and I know the play calling has helped, and Justin Jefferson being who he is has helped, but I don't know. I think the offensive line unit as a whole. I mean, how many times did they sack Cousins? Was it once. They had the.
Well, he was sacked twice today. He had two fumbles, and we kept both of them.
Yeah, so I mean, not a horrible. I mean, all we heard all week was how good this Packers defense is. I mean, what was it, 2 weeks ago with Jordan Love at quarterback when Rodgers was out with COVID? I mean, they shut out the Kansas City Chiefs basically, or they played well against Kansas City, and they
shut out Seattle last week. That's what you're thinking.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, sorry, but they also only gave up like 15 or something points to Kansas City. So all we heard about how great this defense was, and the Vikings completely, I think, destroyed it.
Well, they were missing Rashawn Gary today, and Rashawn Gary is not, the all-pro game changer that a Kenny Clark is, but he's been, I think, markedly better this year and more impactful from a pass rushing standpoint. Hurrying, affecting plays, and those sorts of things. He's been a pain and a problem, and they certainly missed him today. But overall, he was sacked twice today. He's been sacked a total now of 14 times this season.
Yeah,
and so whatever that math is, is that 1.4 times a game? Then?
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay, so he's going to end up in the neighborhood of, let's say, 21, 22 sacks. I mean, that'd be the lowest since Kirk has been a starter.
Right. And when you talk about a quarterback that we have noted is kind of gets happy feet back there when there's pressure on him, keep him clean as clean as you can. That allows him then to find Jefferson down the field, then to get that offense moving. We hit that KJ Osborne across the middle. Those are the scenarios. We had a situation, I'm forgetting exactly what the situation was, maybe 2 weeks ago, where there was a slow developing play and Kirk got sacked, maybe at the end of the Cowboys game, if I'm remembering it correctly. Those slow developing plays work, but you have to have protection to get them to work. So if you can keep him clean, he's dangerous.
Well, there was that third down play in Baltimore, too.
That's what it was.
Two deep developing routes.
Right.
And Kirk just didn't have time.
Right.
No.
And he threw the thing in the dirt, and we punted, and we know what
And there were some
happened
times today where he was rushed, too. I mean, there were a lot of pressures. The 2 sacks, but there were some pressures where he had to get the ball out early. But that goes both ways, right? That's how you get quarterbacks, even the best ones, off their game. Aaron Rodgers. Think how bad he played, or it seemed that he played in the first half. And then think of all the times that he had to throw the ball away because he was getting pressured, whether he was in the grass or whatever. He almost had a perfect passer rating today. He ended at 148, I think. A perfect passer rating is 158.
Well, yeah, because he either threw it away or he hit somebody for 20 yards.
Right.
I mean,
the incompletions were intentional because the pressure was there. So you get pressure on any quarterback that is not necessarily a running quarterback because they have that option to then escape and run.
Yeah.
But you get the statuary quarterbacks, you get them back there and get pressure on them, you can make them have mistakes and have bad games.
I'm sure you guys have noticed this too, but it just kind of popped in my head thinking about this with Kirk and the low number of sacks. Throughout his tenure here, we've always talked about Kirk and when he's at his best, when it's play action, it's designed rollouts, it's boots, it's waggles, you want to throw whatever term. The idea is moving the pocket, buying him that extra second or two. Maybe I'm wrong here. I need to, you can't have a forthright opinion unless you watch the All-22, and maybe there's some deep dive stats that I'm not aware of. Some of his best plays in the way that this offense, we're not seeing as much of the intentional designed rollouts and the play action boots that we saw with Father Gary, that we saw with Stefanski, and so that kind of lends to giving even maybe more credit to the offensive line, keeping him upright. We watched him today with just enough time on several occasions, straight dropbacks, no boots, no movement whatsoever, and maybe Dalvin picks up a blitzer or whatever. And Kirk just stood in there and just daggered people. Some of his most beautiful plays, the long play to Justin Jefferson. Like, he's standing in that pocket, and there's so much less movement or intentional movement as part of the play calling. And this offensive line, for the most part, I mean, the sack totals speak to some of that. They're holding up and keeping him off the turf. So they do deserve some credit. And it's kind of interesting to see how they've had to work maybe that change into the offense. Again, just trying to notice some differences with Clint Kubiak in there. No more, not as many boots, not as many moving around with Kirk.
Yeah, and they had to back then because they didn't have the protection.
The offensive line
wasn't holding up, so you had to find some way to get Kirk some time to get a play to develop. So you're right. I mean, it is an improvement of the offensive line, but what it also does, we always talk about allowing these guys to play straight up, forcing a defense to play straight up. If you have a run game and a passing game, you can do either play anytime, and the defense has to be ready for it. If you have an offensive line that can keep the quarterback in the pocket, you drop one of those boots or one of those play actions, then it's super effective because you know they weren't prepared for it. They don't know that you have to do it every time. So this is the development of this offense. Hopefully, we're seeing this continue, and it just goes down the season with Clint and continues to get better as we go.
How about the day both the wide receivers have? Let's talk about that for a minute. I mean, Justin Jefferson almost has 170 yards. He has 2 touchdowns. I heard Corey talking about it with Greg about how the not having the goal line cam and maybe Justin was in, although they had a pretty good angle of it and he looked maybe 6 inches short. But man, they found something with him. Yeah, and just
it's also a bad challenge.
Yeah, that right. I mean, why waste the timeout? You got 4 chances. If you can't score from down there, then you got other issues. But just line them up. Let them. You're obviously going to give it to Cook 1 or 2 times. It's just the challenge was stupid, but man, have they found something with that kid. And as much as Nordo, you and I talked about it when we were standing here before you guys left. I mean, you have some of these draft picks that they've had, these first round picks with Garrett Bradbury being, benched or whatever today, whatever you want to call it. They've had some awful first-round picks, except for the kid that, almost had 170 yards today.
Well, how about, whether it's first-round picks. I saw somebody chronicling some of this on Twitter, but, I mean, we know the picks from Treadwell 2016, then 2017 you don't have one because you trade for Bradford when Teddy gets hurt. Then in 2018, you draft Mike Hughes. He's in Kansas City right now, probably getting beat in coverage. 2019, Bradbury. And then 2020, you have 2 picks.
I forgot about Mike Hughes.
Jefferson's a budding star, and Jeff Gladney's not in the NFL currently. So it's like, I mean, that's an awful run. And I was actually, when I was looking at the flip card today before the game, and I see the inactive list come out, and I got to cross off 3 of the 4 highly touted third-round picks that we had because they were inactive today. And I don't know what the snap counts were, and if Patrick Jones had any snaps in the game, that would have made all 4 rendered completely ineffective. We
should just trade our picks like the Rams do.
The infusion of young talent with this team, that's a massive problem right now. Yeah. And, maybe between now and the end of the show, we can look back on it, but it's just, you look at all the 1-year deals that you have in the secondary at this particular point. You look at Everson Griffin, God bless him. That guy looked like he was just picture having to push your car to the gas station.
Yeah. I mean, what did Pete say? Looked like an anchor tied to him. I mean, it was just, they have no pass rush, obviously, without Daniil. And I think you said it, Nordo. I mean, we talked about all draft season was, well, they got to find a way to recoup some of these picks. Well, it doesn't matter if these third-round picks, which should play, are inactive most of the time. All we heard about was how good Wyatt Davis was at Ohio State, and he falls to the third round. The Vikings take him, and he's always inactive. It's just, I don't know. I mean,
even when Udo went out, was it against the Chargers? Maybe,
yeah.
And Blake Brandel came in. The 6th round pick, late round. What is he? He's a Beaver, Oregon State.
Right.
No idea.
I mean, the place was set for Wyatt Davis to come in.
Right. Correct.
And they chose Blake Brandel, and then he's inactive today. Chaz Surratt. Really excited for this, an athletic, albeit
I forgot about him.
Possibly undersized linebacker to contribute to the team. I don't know what he does, and he's inactive.
Right.
And then Patrick Jones comes in, and he's finally healthy, and, you don't want to write these people off as rookies. I mean, they still got time to figure it out, but it's like he comes in, he's getting 6-7 snaps on a defensive line right now where, like, Kenny Willekes is out for the 2nd consecutive week. We'd already traded Stephen Weatherly, and Everson Griffin looks perpetually exhausted. It's just that's not a good thing. Yeah. But I will say this: 2 years in a row, whether it's Jefferson and now Christian Darrisaw, for the most part, Darrisaw has work to do to just continue to get better. But I like Darisaw overall. I like the way that he plays, and had a nice fumble recovery on one of those strip sacks.
Save of the day. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's played really well lately too, and I think that's, as long. I mean, if they'd made all those moves and they go back to what was he picked 23, and all of a sudden you have Darisaw and he's just okay, then it's a completely different issue. But man, they've got some with these two tackles. I mean, Brian O'Neill is maybe the best right tackle in football. And, I mean, it's been, 4 or 5 games that the kid's played, but Christian Darisaw, I think, has a lot of – he keeps quiet. You watch him out there. He played really well today, I thought. It's just all-around great player so far, and that's something good, which we don't normally talk about. I mean, we talked about it in the draft when – all these offensive linemen we've drafted, and there's a list of them. I'm sure it went up on KFAN.com. The Willie Beavers of the world. Some of these guys, you're going, what? These are picks we've wasted on offensive linemen? And maybe you can add Wyatt Davis to the list, but so far so good with Christian Darisaw.
Yeah, I mean, again, these are big questions we'll for sure discuss during the offseason. But I guess the other question, kind of along that same line, guys, as early as 2 weeks ago, we were talking about the whole Fire Zimmer train. Is that dead and gone, completely at this point?
Why don't we break and we'll come back and talk about that, because I have some takes on that. Plus, I think there's some food in the press box. We'll break. We'll come back.
I got the text too, Saucy.
Your Minnesota Vikings win 34-31. They improved to 5-5. They've won 2 straight. They take on the 49ers a week from today at 3:25 on this station. Pregame, I would assume, will start about 1:30. Don't forget your Gophers and Badgers play next Saturday at 3 o'clock on this station. And Tampa and the Wild are currently on Cool 108. So there are a lot of sports. But stay right here. We'll talk about the thing AJ brought up. We'll go around the league here in a little bit. There's some good afternoon games going on. There's a good game tonight. And, of course, we got 3 games on Thursday for Thanksgiving. We'll come back. Your Minnesota Vikings win 34-31 right here.
It's the all-new Minnesota Vikings channel on iHeartRadio. Vikes coverage all week long in the podcast section of the iHeartRadio app.
iHeartRadio.
Thielen and Jefferson to the right. Kirk facing a big blitz. He's hit. Loops it up to Jefferson. Caught. 5. Touchdown! Way to go, JJ! And the Vikings have taken the lead, 29-24. Cousins blasted, indefatigable, made him pay.
What an unbelievable game for Justin Jefferson, 169 yards, 8 catches and 2 touchdowns, just domination. AJ Nordo, I think they saw something early on on the tape. They saw something they could kind of exploit with the Packers, and they took full advantage of it and just destroyed that secondary. Jair Alexander, who is out, is one of the best corners in football, but that secondary played really well the past couple of games, and they just destroyed it.
It was weird, too. Justin Jefferson, I believe, had 104 yards and 3 catches in the first quarter.
Yeah, he did.
And then he had 0 yards and 0 catches in the second quarter.
Yeah.
And part of us was thinking, okay, this is the middle of the game, doldrums, where we always get swept away, and then the tides turn, and it happened a little bit, but then he got back involved, got that second touchdown, and added on more yards. A huge game for him. I only wish that someone could have had him in the Fantasy Charge Challenge, Paul.
Yeah, it's pretty easy for you when you get to pick behind people who are terrible at fantasy, but man, I
picked behind Creasel.
Oh yeah. Well, how about this from a fantasy charts challenge standpoint? The 2 guys I had to pick from have combined for 2 points.
Right.
That's pretty good.
Metcalf and who else?
Brandon Cooks. But hey, Hockey got 4 points, so who
right.
cares? I mean, Hockey's guy. We talked about it in the press box. Hockey's guy who had A.J. Brown goes out in the first series with a hand injury and then just barely did anything after that. But there's something seriously wrong with the Seahawks. They just showed a stat. I'm watching it on the Sunday Ticket bit. They've gone like 18 or 19 consecutive drives without a touchdown. Now make it 20 because Russell just got sacked. But, yeah, huge game for Justin Jefferson, man. 2 huge games. They found something against the Chargers, and they did it. The only thing he didn't have last week was a touchdown. He almost had 3 today, but what a stud they have in him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, the idea of when Kirk's back there and the play is called and whoever the featured receiver is or the focal point of that play, Kirk strikes me as a guy that's how he's going to operate, where it's not necessarily in Kirk's head, or it hasn't been in the past, that I want to make sure that JJ's the guy that I hit on this particular play. It feels like it's gone from just acknowledging that Justin Jefferson is really good, and it's gone from that now to actually we need to make sure that he gets 8 to 10 receptions every single freaking game and find a way for him to do some of the explosive things he does. So it's like, it's cool that we have this weapon. Now they've actually looked like game plan, and that's gone hand in hand with some of the aggressive changes offensively with the downfield passing. And I don't know what goes into that if you're Kubiak and you're Kirk and you're these guys and you're sitting down in this room and you're putting things together. But we've watched it now for 11 weeks and 10 games. We've seen some of those opportunities open downfield every single week. We've seen Justin Jefferson winning one-on-one battles near the boundary every single week. And we're just shocked and amazed, and we love it when he makes the play, but then you just don't see it, like AJ said. It was it runs you over like a freight train, and then it just disappears. And that didn't happen in totality today the way that it has in the past. And every one of those receptions went for big yards today, and just short, I think he had like 175 against the Titans last year. That was his career high, so just short of that. But he's been a force the last couple of weeks, and now moving forward, whether it's a very injured secondary with the Niners, and then I think it's Detroit after that. I mean, you start looking at some of these games like this is a month for Justin Jefferson to feast. So we really shouldn't, in my opinion, see a change to that philosophy, and hopefully not a change to the production over the next month or so. Now, going into break, why are you guys so negative? Why is that?
What are you talking about? I forgot what we were talking about.
I know you did.
I didn't bring it up as a negative thing. We were talking about Mike Zimmer, and actually we were talking about Rick Spielman, alluding to Rick Spielman.
We're 5-5.
And then I asked.
We've won 2 in a row.
It's been 2 wins in a row. We're the number 6 seed right now in the NFC playoffs. And we have, like Paul just mentioned, or Nordo just mentioned, an opportunity to win some games with the 49ers, the Lions, the Steelers, and then the Bears in that mix right before you get the Rams, Packers, and then close with the Bears. You have winnable games there. Are we done talking about Fire Zimmer, or is that still in the mix?
Well, I'm not talking about it.
Well,
are you
I'll
guys
talk
done?
about it.
No, you can talk about it. Yeah, go for it, Paul.
I'll talk about it. I think the thing that we basically said all season, we thought it may have been earlier when we almost lost to the Lions, when they played and lost a horrible game to that bad without Dak Cowboys team, and just some of the ways that they've given. I mean,
hey, think about that. We lost to Cooper Rush.
Right.
Oh man.
Right.
It's pathetic.
Right. At home on
pathetic.
Halloween. And the other thing that we've seen a lot with this team is they've led. They always seem to have these large leads, and then they just evaporate with, as you said, Nordo, the second quarter points, the end of the first half points that this team gives up. I mean, you eliminate that. If it's half those points, this team might have 7 wins. Like, that's how bad that and what that's done to this team with all the points they give up. But the one thing with Mike is, I think if they are the 7th seed, and who would be, like right now, AJ, who would be the 2nd seed? Do you have that in front of you?
Give me 1 second.
Would it be the Rams?
Well, I think if the playoffs started today, the Vikings would play the Packers.
The Packers. So, yeah, let's just say it's that. Let's say the
Cowboys
Vikings
are technically the 2nd seed until they lose
Cowboys are the
this
2nd
game.
seed.
Right.
So Arizona, Dallas, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Rams, Minnesota at 6, New Orleans at 7, San Francisco 8.
Right, let's just, whatever
we're
it is.
a playoff team,
right,
Paul.
Sure, but let's say that they go in and they lose in Lambeau because they play what? They play them the second to last game, then they have to go back 2 weeks after that and play them in Lambeau for a playoff game, and they get beat badly or they get beat. I think it might be over. I think that they want a deep playoff run. And everybody that knows more about it than AJ and Nordo and I do has said that. Jason, Lock on Forest said that this probably has to be a deep playoff run.
What a bold take.
I think, and
if they back
I think that
their
report
way,
was just playoffs or bust.
Don't be mad at me, Nordo, that you have to work with PA every day, and if he gets fired, he's going to be mad because he's friends with him. Don't take it out on AJ and I.
I'm not
They're
mad at you.
5-5. They're not 8-1. Calm down.
I'm talking about La Canfora's article. I mean, give me a freaking break. If they don't go on a deep playoff run, it's possible big changes will be made.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're
Whoa,
right.
what a world-changing element. I mean, what an incredible injection of reporting into Vikings land. Are you kidding me? It's the 8th year of his tenure. Things aren't going well. The only thing that irked me was the concept that, I just never felt like, even though it sucked. And you and I, again, we made eye contact after Daryl Hodge or whatever his name, Kadarrell Hodge, had that 2-point conversion for the Lions. And they take the lead there before we go down and we end up getting the victory. And it's like, whoa, this is awful. Like this would be possibly the worst loss in Zimmer's tenure.
That would have been bad.
That would have been awful. I never felt like it was a game to game, depending upon the result. The head coach is going to be sent packing maybe before the freaking bye week. You know what I mean? I think that.
And that thought's gone. Like,
correct.
There's no more mid-season fire.
He'll make it to the end of the year. Now,
so what I'm saying, though, and so, again, I'm not mad at you for this because I agree that anybody out there at the end of this season who's like, unless we're in an NFC title game type of situation or potentially playing 2 weeks after that it's time to move on. I'm not mad at anybody with that opinion. And whether it's in-game management, the inconsistencies, I mean, the coach has some culpability and some responsibility with the year-to-year roller coaster that this team and this fan base is enduring every single season. I love the coach, and I want things to work out. I want him to bring a Lombardi to this city. That's where, for me, like, in the moment, like, I can't bring myself to either root for someone to get fired because that's when you know it's over. That's when you know everything is just bleeped.
Right.
And just what the hell's the point? And, and I am an adult child, and I want this team to win every single game. But if you're seeing a team that limps its way through a wild card game and they're done, if you see a team that is no longer fighting on the back end of this season, maybe they drop out of playoff contention and things just get very lackadaisical and frankly embarrassing, then, and we're talking about a coaching change and we're talking about maybe other changes above him or whatever the offseason holds, I'm not necessarily mad at all that. I was just completely out on the idea of changing the coach or changing the coordinator at this point. They made their bed with Clint, and he's got to learn on the fly. And now if these next 2 weeks are a story about, or these last 2 weeks are a story of what's to come, maybe we want to keep the kid around. Right. If he's learning and he's finding some breakthroughs in how he wants to do this as an OC, maybe we cool on that. But I was never in it on the in-season aspect of it. I'm not mad at anybody that says they want to see a change at the end of the year. I understand it, and I don't want it to happen, but I understand why it could, and maybe it does.
Yeah, I mean, and that story's to be told, right?
Paul.
We have to, whether it's Zimmer or Spielman or Kubiak, we have to be able to give praise along with the criticism. It's so easy to criticize, especially with social media. Everybody's a critic. Everybody now has a voice and a channel to share their opinions, and they can tag the actual person or a media entity or a media personality and let them know that thought as well. But at the same time, if they're doing good things, we need to be fair. We need to give them credit, like we're giving for Clint Kubiak today.
Yeah, and I just think at 5-5, if next week they play a San Francisco team, and I think I saw they're maybe plus 2.5. That's not bad on the road back again out to California, and of course you get to play the Lions 2 weeks from now. I think that's in Detroit. I bet that the Vikings would be 7-point favorites in that game. So you got a chance to get to 7-5, and you can keep climbing because the NFC is so top heavy. There's a lot of bad football. I mean, the Eagles smoked the Saints today. There's a lot of bad football happening.
But even that
in
top
the
heavy,
NFC,
Paul,
yeah.
the top heavy is Arizona.
Well, the Rams aren't that good.
And Dallas right now. Dallas looks awful today.
Well, yeah.
and
Arizona has flaws.
Yeah.
And here's where it's an indictment of this team, this franchise, how it's managed and put together.
Sure.
If you don't make the playoffs this year and take advantage of the fact that even with Brady
you're
and
also
all of those
without
things,
your best defensive player.
I understand that. But if you're not able to at least put yourself in position in the NFC to play a playoff game in an NFC slate where all of these teams are beatable. Mm-hmm. Nobody can tell me right now that there's one team in the NFC that you're like, all right. I mean, that it's obvious they're going to play at SoFi. It's obvious that there's just everyone is a step below this team. We watched Tampa lay one down against Washington. The Cardinals right now struggling. Now Kyler, they need to get healthy, but they are certainly an imperfect operation.
Winning,
yeah, well, we'll have an opportunity to see if that continues. But the Cowboys, with what I'm watching in Kansas City right now, that's a paper tiger of the highest order.
Well, and we should have beat the Cowboys,
and we should
have beat the Cardinals.
Yeah,
I mean, we should have beat those teams.
And so if in January we're not talking about the Vikings as a potential 5th or 6th, if they're not a playoff team, this is one of the great letdowns, meltdowns, and disasters of the last 20 years. Because this, more so than other years, is an opportunity to take advantage of some injured, beaten, and broken teams that are limping their way to victory. So if we're not part of that mix, that's disastrous.
I agree with you, and I think they found something. The way that this team has played the last 2 games, going on the road out to L.A. and winning that game was huge. I mean, they shut down Herbert, who had played really well the weeks prior. It's just we've seen this team do some things that early on we never thought they could do, and a lot of that credit has to go to the coaching staff. I mean, you can't stop the 75-yard one-play drive. I mean, that was just an unbelievable play. But, there's a lot that they've done to change things. And as you said, Nordo, we're watching Kubiak kind of learn on the fly, and they've done some cool things.
Yeah, they have. And so that's why it's like I don't want to talk about the coach firing-related bits. This is an exhausting, dramatic, traumatic season through 10 games where we've seen the highs of what a border battle looks like earlier today to the lows of a missed kick in Phoenix and all of that. So it feels like we've watched an entire season, and we still got 7 left of these things. But if they are if they're indeed finding their rhythm, and this sounds super weird to say, I can't wait for Kenny Willekes to get back and get some stuff. That's where we're at this year.
They need bodies, though.
I saw Eddie Yarborough. I hadn't seen a 66 on the field in a while, and he trotted out there. Eddie Yarborough. Yeah, we plucked him off the Bills practice squad like a couple of years ago, and he wasn't great, and he's been bouncing around.
But they need him.
But that's where we're at on the defensive line.
Yeah,
like all this
bodies,
all this weird stuff, these injuries and all of that, and what we're seeing week to week to week, where they can beat any team in the NFL and they can find a way to lose to any team in the NFL. I mean, it's just the ride is very tiring. But very exhilarating when we catch the highs of it like we got today.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, and it's fun to watch, man. They lose that game, it's just, I mean, this was today's game. The difference of 4-6 and 5-5 is huge.
Yeah,
because then all of a sudden we're sitting here on a Sunday night going, well, now we got to go to San Francisco and back out on the road. But I don't know, it changes everything, especially to beat that Packer team. Who has, they always find, PA was saying it on the broadcast, they're 8-2 or whatever at the time for a reason.
Yeah.
They've played in some tough games, and they still find ways to win. What's their 3 losses are the first game of the season.
Yeah, blown out by the Saints.
In Jacksonville, right?
Yep, yeah.
And then they lost to Kansas City, right?
Yes.
And, then they lose this. That's
the
it.
Minnesota Vikings,
right? And it's Kansas City. It's just a weird league. We saw the Texans beat the Titans today.
Yeah, that was.
We saw the Colts smoke the Bills, just smoked the Bills.
Yeah, the Bills have lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yes.
And, I mean, the Colts aren't a terrible team. They've actually kind of figured out some things, but Jonathan Taylor, holy cats, what a
4 touchdowns on the ground and one through the air.
I saw this stat.
I think he could have had 6, but they pulled back.
Oh yeah, I saw this one stat. Back to the Vikings for a second. Courtney Cronin tweeted it. The Vikings have had the lead now, including today. 4 times they've had a 13-point lead or more.
Man,
we were 1-2.
Yeah.
Now we're 2-2. We're 2-2 in games in which we have had nearly a 2-touchdown lead at some point in the game. How about that?
Well, obviously, Nordo, you're doing the broadcast and helping your guy, and we're all standing here watching the game live. But I swear they had some stat that went across the TV that was basically like, you get that they've had like a 7-point or larger lead in like 8 of their games. Something that.
I think we are, I guess, well, if we were last week and then we did it again this week, we can still be the only team. We're the only team in the NFL that's had a 7-point lead in every single game.
Yeah, let me find it. I just saw.
Yeah, it was. They threw it. They showed it right across the screen on Fox.
Well, the Vikings have now blown a 7-point lead in 9 of their 10 games this season.
Man, that's
so technically they blew the lead.
That's the stat.
Yeah, that's the stat right there.
Yeah. That's incredible, man.
What the hell are we doing?
9 of 10.
9 of 10 is huge. That's, man.
God, how's the heart medicine treating people out there?
And,
my goodness.
And what is it? 8 of their games have come down to the final possession? 8 or 7 of them?
Yeah, well, 9 have been one possession results.
Everybody talks about, staying home for COVID, and you got the kids at home, you're doing school at home, you're spending more time with your spouse, and people talk about the gray hairs coming in. You feel like you've aged 10 years in the last 2 years. Mm-hmm. The Minnesota Vikings do that to us as well. Yeah. Every season, but this one in particular, when you think you got a game in hand, they let it go.
Yeah,
and it's back and forth.
It's extremely
9 of 10
stressful.
times.
Yeah, it's extremely stressful. We'll come back. We got a segment. We'll go around the league. We'll talk about other things. Your Minnesota Vikings win 34-31. Cousins throws 3 touchdowns. Rodgers throws 4, but the Minnesota Vikings find a way to win. They are now 5-5 and take on the 49ers next week, and that will be right here on
Your home for all things purple.
Caught! Yes! Touchdown!
FM 100.3 KFAN, The Fan.
Short drop, passes left, caught Thielen at the 5. He shakes into the end zone. Touchdown! A touchdown from Cousins to Adam Thielen on 3rd down. And for Adam, that's his 8th touchdown this season in his 15th game against Green Bay. And Minnesota leads 15-3. Thank you, Kingsley Keke.
The Minnesota Vikings win 34-31. They are now 5-5. They've won 2 straight. They take on the 49ers next week. And, of course, Power Trip Bets has sent me that the 49ers are minus 2.5, and the over-under is 48.5. I don't watch a lot of 49ers football, but Nordo and AJ, you both know because you both play fantasy football, Deebo Samuel can be a problem and probably will be a problem.
Yeah, I think he ran in. He's been so versatile in that offense, and it's kind of similar like the Vikings trying to figure out how to get the most out of Justin Jefferson, and now they're doing it, and now we're reaping massive rewards. They've kind of done the similar things with Deebo Samuel, and now I think Kittle's healthy and back. He's been back for 2 or 3 games now.
He's had a touchdown in 3 straight games for the first time in his career.
Okay, perfect.
Kittle?
Yep.
Yeah, Kittle.
Wow.
So they're getting on offense, and especially Shanahan in that run game. We're almost like obsessed with how he does it. And he's got like the highest paid fullback in the history of the NFL that use check cat and all of that. But Jimmy G is pretty formidable. Now he keeps it between the hashes for the most part. He's not great throwing to the boundaries, but he can slice and dice a little bit, and for him to avoid making huge mistakes when you got a guy like Debo, that Brandon Ayuk cat,
who's had a rough start, but he's come on of late.
They just have all these pure athletes at those spots, and finding ways to be successful with that Elijah Mitchell and some of these guys out there is pretty impressive. So Shanahan can figure it out one way or another. Defensively, they've really had some trouble. In particular, stopping the run this year, but they still have a lot of the names and a lot of the the big timers that we struggled with when we got beat in the Bay a couple of years ago. So it's going to be a pain in the ass game. It really is. And they're inconsistent like we are. So are they going to be inconsistent on the bad end of things that we can take advantage of that, or vice versa? Are they going to pound us into the ground with that run game? Because we're so injured and hurt up front right now, and we're going to lose licking our wounds on the way back.
What do we know, AJ, about Patrick Peterson? He went out and he came back. Do we have any idea what that was?
Yeah, he said after the game that he needed an IV. He needed some fluids. I don't know if he's cramping or just not feeling great, but he went back to get an IV. Ben and Pete were talking about it as well, that when a player runs off the field back to the locker room with a doctor, there's some concern, but when he runs, you kind of feel better about it. And so, Pat Peterson confirmed after the game that it was just for an IV.
Well, that's good. That's a good thing.
How about the weird situation with Aaron Rodgers?
Right, like
at halftime.
Well, he meat sauced it because he was crabby, so he stood on he was standing, for those of you that weren't here, but you saw it on TV, it's the Polaris exit where the visiting team goes to their locker room. And he's standing there, like, watching the game, like a scorned lover who's mad about the outcome. And all of a sudden, the Vikings, I think, punted, and out walks Jordan Love. Granted, they took a knee, but it was that situation where it was like, what's happening here? And then they took the knee, and he came back out, and as Nordo said, I think he had a touchdown on almost every ball he threw in the second half. The Vikings still get away with the victory. But, yeah, he's banged up. And your guy said it before the game, Nordo, that the Green Bay Packers are one of these teams that have a late bye. And when it's, 2 more weeks, an 18-week season, or 1 more week, excuse me. Some of these teams with late buys have been going at it since August, even though you get like the mini bye week with the Thursday game and that bit. But some of these teams are really, really worn out.
Yeah, they are, and they need the help. And, whether, I don't know if it's Zadarius Smith or Jair Alexander, but one of them, there's like a possibility that they can come back. Like Bakhtiari, just trying to find his way back onto the field again after tearing his ACL. I mean, the Packers are just beaten to hell. Mm-hmm. And so that's a testament to how good the quarterback is, how good that defense has been overall to find themselves at 8-2. So, what I was kind of hoping, you remember that Gophers, I think it was Gophers, Iowa. Was it last year? Why did Zimmer just take some time out, just burn the rest of his timeouts?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there was
just did it to be spiteful.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a super childish move. This is the NFL, highest of decorum and respect for each other.
Sure.
It's not like I don't know how you hate LaFleur. Other than, it's just, how do you,
You can't.
I don't think he ever talks.
Right.
I think he's an okay guy.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think he has to say anything with that quarterback.
Yeah, correct. So, I mean.
We'll find out next year.
Yeah, good point.
But I was honestly just sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, there's 12 seconds left. They're going to have to trot the kid out there to kneel on this thing. Let's just take the timeouts just to be D's, just to be absolute jerks.
Well, and it was weird, too, because the hypothesis was that Rodgers was going back early to get some work done on his toe and get a little head start. Well, then you see him watching the half play out from the tunnel. He didn't go back there to get any head start. No. He was just back there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he made that happen because he thought that KJ play was good.
Yeah, good point.
Because if you're thinking about it, if we connect on that pass, one way or another, it could be implied or assumed that we're going to end the half.
We're not going to get the ball back,
maybe with a field goal attempt from Joseph.
With 6 seconds left. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So,
good point.
But it wasn't, and then
it was weird, yeah.
And then we blew it there. And I think it was a DD running short of the sticks. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, it was.
But we ended up having to punt. And so, he just stood there. I don't know. Rodgers is a weird dude.
Yeah,
right?
he is a weird dude. You are correct. Yeah, he is weird. Nordo, you want to play that Greg Joseph interview?
Are you kidding me?
Let's hear it.
Oh, my goodness. My man Max Fuller has an interview with the game winner himself, Greg Joseph. Do you guys see him being carried off?
Yeah, for about 2 seconds.
He looked like, shucks, I don't want to be up here. Like, I don't want to be that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of one of those things, let's play the interview after the game exclusively on the Fan. Whether you hear Mike Zimmer, you'll hear several of the players. In this case, we had our Greg Coleman chat with the kicker, Greg Joseph, after that game-winning field goal.
G to G. Hey, man, it's something about keeping the fans on the edge of their seats. 8 games that have been decided on the last play. A lot of times as a young kicker, you look forward to the walk-off. What does this one mean against the Green Bay Packers?
It means everything. It means the most important thing it means to me is being able to celebrate with the guys, because at the end of the day, that's why I do this. To put my team in a better position to win each and every game. It's not an I game, it's a team game.
Talk about the 3-person operation. You're right. It's the snap, the hold, and the kick.
They're pros. Deep's been in a while. Barry's been in a while. We bust our butts all week. We practice these moments for this exact reason. So, absolute credit to them. I want to take the light off of me, per se, and give it to them. I always try to celebrate with my teammates. They mean more to me than you know, and they put me in without them, we wouldn't be here,
After the kick, I watched your teammates lift you to the heavens. That has to feel good.
It does. I'm not going to stand here and say I want to get lifted, because I just want to high-five them, and because they deserve just as much credit as me. They did their role in that play, just like I try to do. It does feel good. It's an awesome feeling. But like I said, it's not about me. It's about the team, and I'm just glad they put me in position to deliver, and I do my best to deliver to put W's in the column for this team.
Let's go back earlier during the game. The missed kick. How soon do you put that out of your mind?
Before I hit the kickoff. Been hitting the ball well. Just one of those got away from me. And just like any good athlete has to do, throw it out, move on, because I knew there was going to be bigger kicks to come. So I was locked in, and, bigger kicks came.
Last question before we let you go. What did Mike Zimmer say to you guys in the locker room?
He was juiced up. Obviously it's a big win. Awesome team win over a great Packers team. It took us to the very end. So he was juiced up, and it's awesome to see him that way, because everyone in this building deserves every bit of it, because everyone prepares, everyone busts their butt, and everyone, in this organization loves beating the Packers. So absolute credit to the Packers. They took us, to the end. They are a great team, and we're going to see them later, obviously. But for now, Vikes win, and on to the next one,
Thanksgiving week, what does it mean?
Giving back, can't wait to get back out in the community. Got some stuff where we got some community service planned, and just want to help out, obviously family time, and, we always make time for that. But for now, we celebrate this, and on to San Fran.
Young G from the old G, congratulations, man. Job well done.
Hey, you are the G. I'm just a G.
You're the big G today, my brother.
Appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me, man.
Guys, that's Greg Joseph. Walk-off, game-winning field goal against the Green Bay Packers. Doesn't get any better than that.
That was sweet, dude.
Craig Coleman with Greg Joseph. That's what's kind of fun about kickers and some punters when you actually hear them talk. First of all, you don't know what they sound like until you actually you're shocked by what it. Could there be anybody that was less interested in receiving praise or adulation in regard to his game-winning field goal today? Like, he just wanted to grab a sandwich and get the hell out of there.
Not even that, but how about how all three of us talked all offseason when multiple times when we were like, wait a minute. Who's the kicker of this team? Greg Joseph, what? And he, other than the Arizona kick was hideous, but still, he makes that kick, and now they're 5-5, and as we said, it keeps the season alive, because 4-6 is a completely different ball game. But hey, good for him, man. Excellent play by him, excellent kick by him, perfect situation.
The biggest thing is you miss an extra point in. Like he said, before you do the kickoff right after that, you got to get it out of your head. That's a big deal. That's a really big thing, especially for kickers who they have to be on top of their mental game. They have to have that situation there, and you never know when you're going to need to go out there. But I think every Minnesota Viking fan knew that he was going to have to go back out there and kick for the game on the line one way or the other, whether it was the missed extra point that factored in later or the game winner like we saw. But is there any better sound in all of sports than the doink that Mason Crosby had on that missed field goal?
The whole stadium.
Holy smokes. That's just such a fun sound, especially when it's, the other team and not your team.
He's missing Crosby again.
Right.
What has happened?
Man.
I don't know. So I think that the stat is partially misleading. So he has missed 8 kicks. 3 of them happened in that game against Cincy by itself.
Where there were like 6 missed kicks in the fourth quarter or something?
Yeah, something like that. So it's not like every game he's missed one. But, man, he's looked bad. He's looked uncomfortable. He's pure from what was that, 50-51 right out of the gates on the opening drive. And then just absolutely hooks. Or was it 31? Something like that. And a chip shot. I don't know, but I'll tell you, the rebound that Greg Joseph has made since missing that kick against Arizona has been profound.
Yeah.
He had the game winner against the Detroit Lions. He's pretty much been, I think, as solid as you could ask the rest of the way. So, but man, Crosby, that is not good.
No, it is not.
We've been there.
Yeah, we have. It's not good.
That's why I don't want to be too hard on him.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a good football team. I mean, they're without what were they down to their 3rd or 4th left tackle, and
Elgton Jenkins went out today too.
Yeah. So they got a lot and they're still 8-3, man. But every time you got 12 back there, you got a shot. But as we move forward with next week, you start, as they like to say and the kids like to say, you can start stacking some wins here. If you can get out of San Francisco with a win and you get to 6-5. I mean, nothing's a gimme, but Detroit is terrible, and they almost lost to them, but still, that's a game that you will probably be a heavy favorite in. I mean, as I said when we started this, you get to 7-5, good things could happen to this football team.
Well, I think
it goes from there, too.
Yeah. Just real quick, I think the way you look at it is this team just controls its destiny now.
Yeah, well said.
Where we've always, for the last month, we've just been asking them to get their head above water again. And throughout that time, just how overtime and everything unfolded in Baltimore. And again, primetime Halloween, we're facing Cooper Rush, and he scorched us.
Yeah, he did.
Man, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was bad.
And unacceptable.
Yeah, it was really bad.
You guys wanted the coaches fired. I said,
no,
be patient.
I don't want that anymore.
Okay, good.
Next week is not a quote-unquote must-win game.
Kind of is.
But you can't go out and lay an egg.
Correct.
You have to
AJ.
carry momentum and play good football.
No,
if you don't win the game, you can still find a way to win some games and put some stuff together. There's still enough time in the season, I guess is what I'm saying. But, man, the momentum that they're carrying right now is almost more important than the record. And if they can do that and carry that into Detroit and carry that into Pittsburgh at home, you have an opportunity. You guys mentioned it earlier. Any team in this conference, in the NFC, is beatable. So even when LA comes, we play at LA? I'm trying to remember. I think it's at LA, right?
It's here.
Yeah.
It's here. Okay. When LA comes to town, or when you go to Green Bay to play the Packers at Lambeau, those games are winnable. Okay. But if you're down on yourself and you lay an egg against one of these teams that you should compete with or should beat, then things change and things get weird, and that's when the fan base can turn on a dime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you start, for me, what I do, when I get home tonight.
We don't want to know what you do.
I'm going to start, but I'm starting to kind of scoreboard watch. For instance, the Saints are a wild card team right now. They host the Bills on Thanksgiving. Bills just got their asses kicked at home by the Colts. What's the motive? How does that game look? How does that Bills defense, who statistically have been the best in the NFL for the most part all season, and he just got absolutely bleeped on by Jonathan Taylor, how does that look as a rebound against Trevor Siemian? So you just start playing that game, and the Niners, what does their season look like after this Vikings game? And to, the perfect point that AJ is making here is, of the 7 remaining games, how many are we going to be, truly overmatched? You could look at that Rams game just on paper, although I like Zimmer against Matthew Stafford. He's seen him many times here with a different jersey on. But the Rams and that Packers game, if you're getting down to where you have 2-3 games left in the season and you got to rely on that gauntlet 2-week stretch there to get W's, to get yourself back into a playoff spot, I mean, sign up for winter activities because it's over.
Yeah. What's your problem now?
Well, what I'm saying is as cool as these last 2 weeks have been, in particular for the offense, and I thought defensively they did really good things against Justin Herbert last week. But we're kind of like the Packers right now. We're running out of healthy bodies.
Yeah. The defensive line is in tough shape.
If I'm looking up Eddie Yarborough stats for PA during a game, something has gone tragically wrong. So,
who?
Correct. So the thing for me now is that there's no little cute lulls allowed anymore this season. So what we've seen the last 2 weeks has to persist. And if it doesn't, then the season's going to be over and it's going to be frustrating and those hashtags are going to come back again.
Yeah, it is what it is. But, AJ, what's on KFAN.com?
Well, I mean, the breakdown of the playoff schedule will be the first thing up there, and then we'll start previewing these games coming up. Hopefully, like you guys mentioned, we can get some healthy bodies out there. Again, we're just breaking it down. This is when it becomes fun, right? We have all the different scenarios. We're not talking about draft picks. It's meaningful football.
Yeah, and as we said about the Packers and some of these teams that have late bye weeks, we had ours already, but they also get to play that Thursday game against Pittsburgh where they should be favorites, but you get kind of a mini bye with that. You get extra
leading
days,
into Chicago, I think.
Correct, which you get extra days off, which is huge, and that's the game they play at Chicago, right? Because they finish at home against Chicago.
Correct.
And please, let's not have to play. Let's have a goal set.
I don't want that game to matter.
Correct. Let's have a goal set where that game isn't going to matter, and we don't need to do anything with that game because AJ and Nordo, we've all been here, and we're going. We
specifically against that team.
We lost to that team.
Yeah.
Oh, the Bears?
We lost to that football team?
2018 winning in, Jordan Howard goes for like $160 on us.
And they had nothing to play for, right? Weren't they already in?
Well, they were already in. That was a 12-4 double doink season for them. And then last year, last year, even though it wasn't the last game of the season, we lose that shootout with Trubisky. I mean, just a disastrous game that was. Guess what? They're 8-8. They end up in the playoffs. That's the linchpin game. The Bears have knocked us out of the playoffs the last 2 times we've missed it. So if it comes that, like I said, win these games now, because if you're looking at the Rams and Lambeau and whatever the hell kind of voodoo magic happens when the Bears come to U.S. Bank Stadium, if you're relying on needing 2 of those or all 3, again, it's trouble. So this good vibe has to persist.
Yeah, you are right, and it's fun, as you just said, AJ. It's awesome. Fun. It's fun when they matter. As much as I love the NFL draft, if they're 3-7, we're looking forward.
You
to
love
that,
it in April.
You love it in April because the season's over.
Not November.
But 5-5, man, here we go. As you said, Nordo, they control their own destiny. We'll see how it goes from there. But what do you got 9 to noon, Nordo, quickly?
9 to noon, it's montage, it's recapping, celebrating a border battle victory. Might have Lavelle in the mix, and much more.
I saw Lavelle on social media today.
Oh yeah. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks, Max. Thank you, everybody. Your Minnesota Vikings win 34-31. They take on the San Francisco 49ers next week. We'll see how that goes, and we'll go from there. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you to Max, and peace out.